Chapter 3. During the night, Mike wasn't quite so sure. He thrashed back and forth in the bed, both tormented and thrilled by the decision he'd made. The captain wouldn't approve of my going. Who says he wouldn't? He's a career officer. He'd be proud that I want to serve in the Union. He wants me to take care of Louisa. She's taking care of me. She doesn't need me to take care of her. And as Todd said, the women take care of each other. If the captain were here, what would he tell me? He's my father now. Captain Taylor is one of the finest, fairest men Mike had ever met, and he wished with all his heart he could truly hear what the captain had to say. Suddenly, with a great surge of loneliness, Mike pictured his mother and father and brothers and sisters in the small room they once shared in New York City before Da died, before Mike was arrested as a copper stealer. Mike had only been trying to help feed his family. He'd never expected his theft to divide the Kellys. If only earning money... I was just earning money for food and a place to live hadn't been so hard, Mike thought. If only Da hadn't died. Da, Mike whispered, and he pictured his father's kind face. Oh, Da, what should I do? What would you have me do? He held his breath, hoping for an answer, but all he heard was the rat-tat-tat of imaginary drums. I know the drum calls, Mike told himself, and that's what counts, because Jeb says the Army badly needs drummers. He listened to the bugle's call and saw the flag held high. He burned with eagerness. He had to join the Army. He had to. Early the next morning, Mike sought out Todd, whose pale face and darkly circled eyes showed he hadn't slept well either. While the boys hunkered down in the shade between two of the buildings, in the officers' quarters, Todd pulled his pocket watch out of his jacket, fingered it, and shoved it back. Out and back, out and back. Finally he mumbled, I've been thinking. Mike's throat tightened as he waited for Todd to go on. Ma'd be terribly angry if I joined up, Todd said. There wasn't anything about Army life that Ma likes. She wants me to have a different sort of life. She reminded me again this morning she's got plans for me to go to college someday, like some of her cousins who live in Boston, so I can become a banker or a businessman. She's already teaching me and my sisters Latin verbs and making us read poetry every evening before we go to bed, and hard lump began to grow in Mike's chest. You're backing out. I didn't take you for a quitter. I'm not a quitter, Todd insisted. I'm just telling you how my mom would feel if I ran off to join the Army. Through his disappointment, Mike shrugged and murmured, Now I'll go by myself. You're not old enough. Neither are you, but age don't matter. The Union Army needs musicians to send orders to troops in battle. We know the drum calls, and you know the bugle. We could help the Union win the war. I know we could. I guess, Todd said. He glanced at Mike. How's your mother going to take it? I don't see why Louisa would get mad, Mike answered. I heard her tell the captain how proud she was of him before he rode off with his company. But, well, my own ma's different. She wouldn't like my joining the Army. I can tell you that right now. And she'll start worrying about me the minute she gets the letter I'm going to write her. Todd turned to stare at Mike and grinned. You've got two women to worry about whether or not you're getting enough food to eat, or your socks are wet, or there's a reb on your tail. That's twice as bad as one. Mike made a face and pretended to groan. Adds up to more than two, he bragged. My sisters, Frances and Megan, all have something to say to me when they find out what I've done. For all I know, my little sister Peg's old enough to speak her mind on the subject. Todd chuckled, but Mike grew serious. Danny now, he's a year younger than me. Danny would understand, and Petey, he's too little to even think about war. Once again, Mike was swallowed by a rush of homesickness for his family. He squeezed his eyes shut, seeing their smiling faces, and fought against the pain. They're all going to be proud of you, Todd said. Mike opened his eyes and nodded. He could visualize himself standing tall in the uniform of a Union private, the round crowned, dark blue forage cap cocked so that its black glazed leather peak sloped down sharply over his eyes. Maybe there'd be a medal on his chest, maybe two or three. They're bound to be, he said with a grin. I'll be the only soldier in the Kelly family. After a few moments, Todd said, Guess you're right, Mike. We're bound by duty to help out. Mike sucked in his breath. Does that mean you're in? I'm in, Todd said. When do we go? Mike shrugged. I'm ready to leave now. Todd shook his head. Nah, it'd be too easy to send someone to look for us during daylight hours. We'll have to leave after dark, probably when they think we're in bed and asleep. Have the sentries challenge us? Mike shook his head. I have got a better idea. We can leave with the sutlers in the late afternoon. Their wagons will be near empty. One of them might give us a ride. Mike pursed his lips as he thought. A ride would save some shoe leather. It's a good 30 miles or more to Kansas City. That's right, Mike said. And we'll have to drum and your bugle to carry along with the rest of the things we have to take. Todd looked surprised. What else do we have to take? We'll change of clothes, I guess, Mike said. And a blanket. The Army issues blankets. Haven't you seen they're handing them out to new recruits? Guess I haven't paid much attention. Well, I have, Todd said. We'll get uniform, drawers, socks, shoes, a horse haversack to carry our rations, a wool-covered tin canteen, and a rubber blanket. A rubber blanket? What's that for? Mike asked. Keeps everything dry. Sometimes the ground's wet, and you can spread out the rubber blanket before you make up your bed. I've only got $2 a coin to call my own, Mike said. How much you got? Todd looked surprised. Not much more than that. I guess we better take food with us, enough to last till we reach the 2nd Kansas Infantry and join up. As he and Todd looked at each other, Mike's heart gave a jump. They were going to enlist. They were going to do it. The day passed slowly. That afternoon companionably chattering to Mike about some of the latest news. To reach the fort, Louisa set breads to rise, asking Mike's help in fetching wood for the stove. Mike volunteered to scrub the kitchen floor and sweep the front porch, hoping that if he stayed busy, Louisa wouldn't be able to read his thoughts. Finally, Louisa said, "It's a warm day for the end of June. I'd benefit from a nap." She unbuttoned the high collar of her dress and fanned her neck. "As for you, Mike, I think you're more in need of exercise than study at this moment. We'll delay supper till after sundown, when it's cooler, and go over your lessons this evening. Just be back in time to eat." Feeling too guilty to meet Louisa's eyes, Mike tucked his head, gave her a quick hug, and ran outside. He'd already set the plan in motion. He'd packed a bundle of clothing wrapped tightly around the letter-writing supplies. He'd lowered the bundle from the window, tucked it out of sight under the stairway, leading to the front porch. As soon as he was sure Louisa had stretched out on her bed, Mike snatched up his bundle and raced to the barn. Todd slipped through the door just as Mike was tucking his bundle next to the drum. Todd pointed toward the bale of hay. "I shoved my pack down behind it. I've got food for us, too. You get any?" "I couldn't. Louisa would have been suspicious." Todd shrugged. "Ma claims I eat all the time. If I wasn't into the food, she would have known something was up." "I wonder what they'll give us to eat in the army." "Who cares? We're not joining for home cooking." Mike laughed. A little feverish excitement filled his chest. If all went well, he'd be officially enlisted as a musician for the Union Army as soon as tomorrow. "I wrote Louisa a letter tucked under my pillow where she'll find it tonight," he told Todd. "I wrote my ma a letter too," Todd said, "only I gave it to my sister Emily to give it to her." Mike was alarmed. "Won't Emily tell?" "Nope. I paid her $1. She snuffled and her eyes got red, but she admitted she was glad I was going. She's still miffed about the frog I put in her bed, among other things." Todd paused and said, "What'd you say to Louisa?" "I tried to tell her how grateful I was for her and for the captain for taking me in, and how much they mean to me, and then I tried to tell her why it's important for me to follow the captain's example and fight for what I believe in. I saw a slave once, captured and in chains, and I'll never forget the awful look in his eyes, like he was already dead. I told Louisa," Mike shook his head and said brusquely, "Well, never mind. I just hope she'll understand." Todd was matter of fact. "Doesn't really matter if she does or not. You'll be gone." Mike said nothing, but he knew Todd was wrong. The captain and Louisa were his foster parents, and he loved them almost as much as he loved his own parents. The tack room was stifling, and the hay made Mike and Todd sneeze, but they stayed in the hideout. Only when the sun shot long shadows over the parade ground and the sutlers began to cover their unsold merchandise preparing to leave the fort did the boys venture out. Trembling, Mike slung his drum around his neck and picked up the drumsticks with his clothing. "Ready?" he asked Todd. White-faced Todd gulped twice before he answered, "Ready." The sutlers weren't the only ones to leave the fort. Other tradespeople, salesmen, the volunteers found late afternoon a convenient time to depart, and the main gate was crowded with wagons, carriages, and travelers on horseback and on foot. Cautiously, heads down so they wouldn't be recognized, Mike and Todd slid into the crowd. Mike let out his breath and whoosh as he realized they were finally outside of the guards. Ahead he spied a ruddy, smiling settler who looked familiar. Running down to the side of the wagon, Mike hailed him. "You bound for Kansas City?" "That I am," the settler tugged on the reins, pulling his horse to a stop on the side of the road. He narrowed his eyes and studied the boys. "Aren't you needed back at the fort?" "No," Todd answered quickly, dodging a buggy that passed at a clip. "We're needed by Colonel Mitchell with the 2nd Kansas Infantry." The settler allowed his glance to rest on the drum and the bugle. "Things have come to a sad pass when they're signing up mere boys as musicians." He shrugged as he acknowledged, "Musicians seem to be hard to come by. I've heard some of the companies out of Fort Scott have had to leave without a drummer or a bugler." He gave a jerk to the head to his nearly empty wagon. "Hop aboard if you mind to. Make yourselves comfortable. It'll be a good 10 hours with time out for resting and water and horse before we reach Kansas City." Mike and Todd did as they were told, glad for the ride. As the wagon moved at rapidly thinning traffic, they settled themselves against the hard wooden sideboards, using their bundles as pillows for their backs. From the perch high on the wagon seat, the sutler opened a parcel containing a sausage reeking of garlic, a loaf of bread, and began to chew noisily. Thankful that he and Todd wouldn't have to share their own supply of food, Mike accepted a chunk of bread and cheese and an apple from his friend and gobbled his supper greedily. Todd pulled out his pocket watch and peered at it in the dimming light. He breathed on the glass surface, polished it with his sleeve, and tucked it back in his pocket. "Pa gave me this watch," he said, smiling at the recollection. A strange gargling noise suddenly came from the front seat. Mike twisted to see if something was the matter and discovered the sutler was hunched over, his shoulders rounded as a ball. "He's asleep. He's snoring," Todd whispered as another flummy rattle rolled back at them. "What about the horse? How can you guide him?" Mike whispered. Todd put his mouth close to Mike's ear. "The horse probably knows the road better than he does. The only thing we have to worry about is if the horse falls asleep." Mike buried his face in his arms, trying to smother his burst of laughter. Finally, when the hysteria of the moment had passed and the sutler snored on undisturbed, Mike stretched on the wagon bed. Using his bundle of clothes as a pillow, he stared up at the stars, which were shining faintly in the darkened sky. Todd settled down beside him, and Mike didn't speak. There was too much he wanted to think about. He was on his own, embarking on a great adventure. He'd chosen to serve the Union and fight spite the stubborn-minded Southerners who practiced slavery. Hadn't I always told him never be afraid to stand up for what you believe is right? That's what he was doing. If the Union Army so badly needed musicians, surely they'd accept him, wouldn't they? Mike groaned involuntarily. Embarrassed, he quickly turned to Todd. Mike's relief, Todd was lying on his side, breathing heavily, sound asleep. Relax, Mike told himself. What's done is done. You're on your way, my lad, to join up with the 2nd Kansas Infantry. And by this time tomorrow night, you'll be a full-fledged, respected member of the Union Army.